The sky hung heavy with dust, as if the land had forgotten how to rain. A windmill moaned on rusted hinges, its slow rotation, the only sound besides the crunch of gravel beneath worn boots. She stood still near the fence post, hands clasped in front of her like she was holding something that wasn't there, maybe a baby she'd never get to cradle. Her mother stood behind her, stiff-backed, lips thinned into a line that might once have been kind. Her father smoked a crooked pipe and stared into the horizon, where the prairie met the sun like a closing wound. No one spoke. The preacher arrived late, wrapped in a long black coat that didn't seem to gather dust the way everything else did. His wagon bore no markings, and the horses looked tired but well-fed. He didn't dismount right away, just sat there hat low, eyes hidden. When he finally did slide down, the first thing he did was glance at the girl, and then toward the house. He walked like someone who'd been walking too long, and when he reached them, he didn't offer a greeting, just held out a hand. Her father placed a soft cloth bag in it. The weight of it made it clink. That was all. Not even a handshake. The girl didn't flinch. Not when her mother finally said, "You'll be better off." Not when her father looked past her and added, "Nothing left here for you, anyway." Her mouth opened, just a little, like she might argue. But what was there to fight for? She'd tried every root tea, every whispered prayer, every bit of magic the women in town believed in. The last time her cycle came, her mother wept louder than she did. They didn't even hug her goodbye. The preacher gestured, and she climbed into the back of the wagon, where wooden slats penned her in like a pig on market day. The preacher whistled, and the horses moved forward. She didn't look back. The road stretched long and cracked beneath the wheels. They passed through towns that didn't ask questions, and woods that whispered old names. The preacher said little. Once he offered her jerky and water. She took both. Another time, she asked where they were going. He said, "North, forest country. There's a man there who needs help raising his children." She waited for more. It didn't come. Some nights, he picked up other girls. One of them cried herself to sleep. Another wouldn't speak at all, just stared wide-eyed like a fawn waiting for the bullet. But the girl who'd been sold for infertility sat still, hands on her knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. She imagined what kind of man needed a woman like her. Not a wife, not a lover, just a womb that wouldn't work. She imagined him angry, lonely, maybe cruel. The preacher left her just beyond the clearing, where the trees opened like pulled curtains. He didn't say goodbye, just pointed to a narrow trail and said, "Keep walking till you hear an axe. Don't run. He doesn't like runners." She walked. The path smelled of pine sap and old leaves, the ground soft with decay. Birds kept quiet. Somewhere deeper in the woods, something howled. She gripped her shawl tighter. Then she heard it, the solid, rhythmic chop of wood meeting blade. She followed the sound, each step louder in her own head. Her boot slipped once on moss, and she caught herself with a gasp. The man was bigger than she imagined. He stood shirtless beside a stump, muscles slick with sweat, dark hair falling in his eyes as he swung the axe. One log split clean, another cracked jagged. He didn't stop when he saw her, just finished the stroke, then leaned on the axe like a crutch. "You're the one?" he asked, voice low and dry. She nodded. He looked her over, not with hunger, not with cruelty, just studied her, like assessing a broken tool he wasn't sure how to fix. Then he turned, called out once, and 4 children appeared on the porch of a crooked cabin. They stared at her like she was a ghost. The youngest had dirt on her cheeks and hugged a baby goat tight. One of the boys had a bruised eye and held a piece of bark, like it might be a weapon. The oldest girl narrowed her eyes and didn't blink. The man pointed toward the house. "You'll sleep in the back room. Work gets done by sundown. If you don't work, you don't eat." He walked off. The axe stayed behind, stuck deep in the stump. Inside, the cabin smelled of smoke and stew and something old. The floorboards creaked. A pot boiled over the fire, and a kettle hissed like it had been angry for hours. No one helped her unpack. No one asked her name. She moved through the room slow, like stepping into cold water. The youngest followed her. The girl didn't speak, just touched the edge of her skirt and stared up with wet eyes. That night, she lay on a mattress stuffed with hay, staring at the ceiling. She heard the man's footsteps above her, slow and steady. A floorboard groaned when he turned. One of the children whimpered in their sleep. She didn't cry, just pressed her hands over her belly and breathed. She wasn't a wife. She wasn't a daughter anymore. She wasn't even property. She was something bought for function that she'd already failed to serve. But when the wind pushed through the cracks in the cabin walls and the firelight danced on the wooden ceiling, she didn't feel broken. She felt waiting, like something had started, even if no one had spoken it yet. In the distance, the forest whispered, not cruel, not kind, just watching. The days fell into rhythm the way ash settles after a fire, quiet gray, without ceremony. Each morning began with frost-laced grass and the cold breath of the forest wrapping around her like a second skin. She rose before the sun, built the fire, and stirred the pot even when it was empty. No one told her what to do, but the cabin had its language. A pile of unwashed clothes by the door, half-sawn logs, soup bones left in a bowl. She listened. The man did not speak much. When he did, his words came like split wood, rough, blunt, sometimes with splinters left behind. He worked the same rhythm every day, his axe ringing through the trees, a sound so constant it became a part of the wind. He returned before dusk, shoulders heavy with labor, hands bleeding more often than not. She offered to wrap them once. He refused without looking up. The children studied her like she might vanish. The youngest girl, no older than 5, followed her like a shadow. The older boys, silent, all elbows and bruises, kept near the woods, carving sticks into spears and never meeting her eyes. The middle child, a boy with a sharp tongue and nervous hands, asked questions at night when the man had gone to bed. Were you really sold? Do you know how to shoot? Did you want to come here? She never answered the last one. The eldest, a girl nearly grown, folded her arms across her chest whenever their paths crossed. She cleaned fish with a blade too big for her small hands and sharpened it like she meant to use it. Her eyes were the man's eyes, stone dark, unforgiving. They didn't call her anything. She hadn't offered a name, and no one asked. Work gave her purpose, if not peace. She fixed the broken shutter on the upstairs window. She patched holes in the thatched roof with bark and pitch. She cleaned the soot-black walls of the hearth until the wood grain re-emerged. Some part of the cabin, like its people, had forgotten softness. She scraped at it gently. One evening, she found a pile of wooden carvings under the eldest daughter's bed. Wolves, rabbits, a deer with missing legs. Each had initials on the belly, the man's. She placed them in a box and left it by the fire. Nothing was said the next day, but she found bread left for her on the table that night, still warm. They didn't eat together. The man took his meals alone on the porch, plate balanced on his knee. The children fended for themselves. She ate last, standing in the doorway with a spoon and bowl and no desire for company. One night, the boy with the bruises screamed in his sleep. She rushed him before thinking and found him thrashing under a threadbare quilt. She placed a hand on his shoulder. He struck out instinctively. She didn't flinch, just whispered, "You're safe. It's just a dream." He blinked, startled, then turned away, ashamed. She sat by the bed until his breathing steadied. Later, the man found her outside, throwing wood on the fire. His face was unreadable in the low light. He didn't thank her, just said, "He don't like being touched." "I know," she replied. "Neither do I." The silence that followed wasn't cold, just understanding. Rain came in thin ribbons one dawn. The roof held, thanks to her patches. The children gathered close that day, the younger ones drawing pictures with charcoal on the wall, the older ones watching without joining. She taught the youngest how to braid twine. The girl beamed. That night, the man paused at the door and said, "She hasn't smiled like that in a year." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. As the days wore on, the forest grew heavier with snow and silence. The chores multiplied. With a stack, traps to check, animals to feed. She did them without being asked. Each act a thread she wove into the fabric of the place. The man began to leave his tools out where she could reach them. The oldest daughter left out extra cloth for her mending. Small things. Quiet shifts. One afternoon, while mending a fence beyond the goat pen, she saw the man shirtless again. This time, not at work, but washing in the creek. His back was a map of healed pain. Raised scars like whip lines or lashings, cross and uneven crisscrosses. She didn't mean to stare. He turned. Their eyes met. He didn't cover himself. Didn't explain. Just walked past her, water dripping from his hair, and said, "You got questions, ask, She didn't ask. Not that day. But that night, while folding linen, she said, "Who hurt you?" He paused, looked at the fire for a long time, then said, "My father," then the war, then life. She didn't press. They both had stories that weren't ready for telling. Later that same week, he found her on the porch, watching the moon rise. He offered her a carving, an unfinished fox, small and delicate. "Thought you might want something of your own," he said. She took it. The wood was warm from his hand. She held it like it might vanish. "Why did you take me?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Then, didn't want a woman, didn't want a wife, just needed someone who wouldn't run. She looked at the horizon. The moonlight caught her hair and made it silver. "I'm not running," she said. "I know." He turned, went back inside. She stayed there long after the door closed, listening to the wind thread itself through the trees. It was the first time in months she felt the land breathe with her. The fox stayed in her palm the whole night. The first sign of him was a scent, clove oil and sweat, drifting on the wind like a memory. She smelled it before she saw the man. A scent too clean for these woods, too foreign. It settled in her lungs like smoke. He rode in slow, one boot dragging the dirt, his horse slick with sweat and silence. The children froze where they stood. She stepped in front of them before thinking, a hand on the smallest girl's shoulder, firm but calm. The man dismounted, slow and sure, the kind of slow that meant no fear. His coat was pressed, dark blue, fraying just slightly at the cuffs. A revolver gleamed at his side like a second mouth, waiting to speak. "You've grown," he said like he knew her. She said nothing, but her stomach dropped like a trapdoor. He tipped his hat and smiled, not kind. "Your folks send their regards." She couldn't speak. Her throat felt lined with splinters. Behind her, she heard the eldest daughter pick up the kitchen knife. The boy with bruises reached for the slingshot he always carried in his back pocket. The man scanned the cabin, then turned to her. They got land now. Rich soil. Corn so tall a man could get lost in it. And a baby girl. Healthy, fat-cheeked, with eyes just like your ma's. His smile widened. Turns out the problem wasn't your daddy's seed after all. She flinched, not visibly, but inside, a shutter slammed closed. The lumberjack stepped out of the trees and, axe in hand, shirt still damp from work. His eyes flicked to her, then to the stranger. He said nothing. The man took a step forward, slow and careful. "I've come to bring her back. The preacher, he's got buyers waiting. And her folks, well, they feel bad, want her closer to home, make amends." The lumberjack planted his feet. "No one's going anywhere." Something in the air snapped taut, invisible but sharp. The man laughed once. It didn't reach his eyes. "Not looking for trouble, friend. Just collecting what's mine. She's not yours." He shrugged. "Everything's owned by someone out here." She spoke then, voice low but hard. "I wasn't yours to begin with." He looked at her, really looked. His smile faltered. "You'll regret this," he said. "You always do." And then he left. No one moved for a long time. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. The children clustered together. The lumberjack stared after the man until the hoofbeats faded. Then he turned to her. "You know him?" She nodded. "He works with the preacher. Collects girls who don't fight back." He said nothing, just stared at the horizon, like it might turn around and come for them. That night, she found a goat dead. Throat slit clean. No blood, like it had been done by someone who knew where the vein ran. She didn't scream, just stood in the wet grass and let the cold bite into her skin. Inside, she found a man cleaning his rifle. We should leave, she said. His hands didn't pause. We don't run. She swallowed. Then we prepare. They barred the doors. Nailed planks across windows. Dug shallow pits around the cabin's edge. Filled them with glass shards and thorn vine. The eldest helped without question. The boys gathered stones, sharpened sticks. The youngest girl sat in the corner of the cabin with a wooden horse in her lap, humming something sad. At dusk, the man handed her a revolver. She weighed it in her hand. It felt heavy but not foreign. I've never shot one, she said. You might have to. That night, sleep came slow and restless. Every creak of wood was a footstep. Every gust of wind, a whisper. The fire burned low when it happened. A scent first, smoke, but wrong. She ran to the back window. Flames licked the edge of the barn. The animals screamed. She didn't wait for orders. She shoved the children under the floorboards into the old cellar they used for curing meat. The man took position at the door, rifle steady. Then came the shots. She saw the stranger through the flame glow, moving like he owned the night. His coat flared behind him like wings of ash. 2 others were with him, shadows with guns. She took a breath and stepped onto porch, revolver raised. The first bullet missed. The second grazed her arm. She didn't stop. She kept walking, stepped slow, deliberate. The man fired. One of the shadows dropped. The other fled. The stranger didn't flinch. He moved toward her like a tide. You think you're something now? He hissed. You think this little life you've patched together is real? She didn't answer, just raised the revolver again. He laughed. You don't have the stomach. I don't need stomach, she said. Just purpose. She fired. The stranger dropped to one knee, blood soaking his sleeve. He cursed loud enough to wake the mountain. The man moved beside her then, rifle aimed at the stranger's chest. Go, he said, or you won't walk out next time. The stranger spat. She's not worth it. The man didn't blink. She's worth everything. For a moment, the world was silent. The fire crackled. The stranger stood, clutching his arm, eyes like poison. This ain't over. He limped into the trees. Disappeared. She didn't collapse until he was gone. Blood trickled down her forearm. The children climbed out of the cellar one by one, eyes wide, faces pale. The barn was gone, but the cabin stood. The man knelt beside her, tore a strip from his shirt, and wrapped her wound. You all right? She nodded. You didn't run. She looked him in the eye. I never will. Dawn came late, crawling over the treetops in streaks of bruised gold. Smoke curled from the wreckage of the barn, rising like a ghost into the cold sky. She stood in the ash barefoot, skin cut and smudged, staring at the place the goats used to sleep. Nothing remained but embers and splintered timbers. One of the boys tried to help gather the charred pieces, but she shook her head gently. Let it burn. The man hadn't slept. He sat on the porch, eyes hollow from watching the tree line all night. The rifle rested across his lap, like a warning no one had heeded. When she brought him water, he took it without speaking, though his fingers brushed hers with a softness that didn't match the calluses. It lingered longer than it should have, and then it was gone. The stranger would come back. They both knew it. He hadn't limped into the forest to die. He'd retreated like a wolf, wounded, yes, but waiting for a better strike. She felt in the air, thick with tension and pine resin. A reckoning was on its way. They didn't speak of it directly. They simply prepared. The man dug a trench behind the cabin. She built a false trail with footprints leading south, scattering the boys' old boots to sell the lie. The eldest daughter polished her blade until it gleamed like lightning. Even the little ones felt it. They played quieter, kept close. She carved another figure, a fox this time, unfinished, the same shape he'd once given her. She sanded it smooth, hand steady even as her thoughts wavered. She kept thinking of what it meant to kill a man, and worse, what it meant not to. She hadn't aimed a wound. She just hadn't aimed at all. Her hands had chosen before her mind could catch up. At dusk, she sat beside the man as he sharpened his knife. The sound was steady, like a whisper over stone. You said once you sold your soul, she said softly. He didn't look up. I was young. Took a bounty I shouldn't be. Thought it was just a job. Turned out it was a family hiding from a man like me. She waited. They had 4 kids. I couldn't do it. Let M run. Lied about it after. Got whipped for it. Nearly killed. Her breath caught. That's why you took them in. He nodded. Figure I owed the world something. She watched the firelight dance in his eyes, the weight in his posture less heavy than it once was. She didn't speak again. Didn't need to. The next morning, the stranger returned. He rode alone but not empty-handed, a torch in one hand, a long rifle slung low. His coat fluttered behind him like a funeral flag. They saw him before he reached the clearing. The man stood at the center of the yard, calm as stone, gun already drawn. She took her place beside him. The children remained inside, watching through slats, holding each other's hands. The stranger dismounted slowly, grin crooked despite the blood-stained bandage still wrapped around his arm. You shoot me again, he said. I won't be so friendly. No one here is smiling, the man answered. The stranger looked at her, eyes gleaming. You gonna hide behind him forever? I'm not hiding, she said. He chuckled. That's so. She stepped forward, heart hammering in her throat. I buried my old life when my parents gave me away. You're just the last ghost left to burn. The stranger's grin twitched, then cracked. You think he'll protect you? He's broken. Just like you. She drew the revolver. It felt lighter this time. Familiar. I don't need protecting. I need you gone. For a moment, no one breathed. Then everything moved at once. The stranger raised his rifle, fast but not fast enough. She fired first. The bullet hit low, drove him backward into the dirt. He screamed, clutching his side. The man moved in, kicked the weapon from his hand, then aimed down, rifle ready to finish what she'd started. But she stepped in, not out of mercy, out of something deeper, older. She crouched beside the stranger, whose face had crumpled into something that looked almost human. His voice cracked. Your folks, they didn't want to, said they had no choice. They made one, she said, and so did I. She stood. Leave. Crawl. Bleed. It's more than you ever gave me. The man didn't argue, just watched her with something unreadable in his expression. Part pride, part sorrow. The stranger staggered to his horse, spitting curses and blood. He rode off bent and broken. This time, they knew he wouldn't return. Rain fell before nightfall, soft and steady. The land drank deep. She stood at the edge of the property, face turned skyward, letting the water wash away smoke, blood, and fear. It was the first real rain in weeks. The earth smelled alive again. Inside, the cabin glowed. The children sat around the hearth, a stew bubbling on the fire. The eldest had taken the lead in stirring. The others watched her like she was something solid in a shifting world. He came up behind her, quiet as ever. She didn't turn. You did what I couldn't, he said. She shrugged. I didn't want to, but some endings have to be chosen. They stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder, watching the rain turn dirt into soil. He reached into his pocket and placed something in her hand. The wooden fox. Finished now. Eyes carved, tail curved. Ho! She didn't speak, just held it tight. Weeks passed. They rebuilt the barn. Planted rows of corn, not for profit, but for the children's hands to grow into. The youngest learned to read. The boy with the bruises stopped flinching when touched. The eldest smiled once, just once, and that was enough. One evening, she walked the land's edge alone. The sky blazed orange and pink behind the trees, and the fence she'd helped mend stood firm against the wind. Her feet were bare, her shoulders light. Behind her, he called out, voice rough but steady, supper's ready. She turned. Light caught her face, warm but warm, healed but not hollow. The cabin glowed behind him, firelit and full of life. She walked back slow, not as a wife, not as property, not as what she'd been made to be, but as someone who had built her place in the world, one scar, one nail, one breath at a time. And this time it was hers.